Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Empower Hour. Sorry for the wait. We had appreciate your patience. Just some technical difficulties. I see the chat blowing up. I love to see that. I'm excited to have everybody here. This event is being brought to you by the Ohio University Alumni Association, where our goal is to advance the mission of Ohio University by engaging you, our alumni, and our supporters. So we really do appreciate you being here so that we can continue to provide awesome experiences to current and future Bobcats. My name is Caleb Biesecker, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Experiences, and I'm going to be your OUAA rep for the day. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. So first, for your knowledge, your camera and microphone is turned off, but you are able to participate via the chat, and we really encourage you to do so. That makes things a lot more fun, a lot more engaging when you all are involved in the chat. I also want to point out that there's going to be some polls throughout, and so when you see a poll and are prompted to answer, please feel free to do so and engage in that way. Again, it just makes for the best experience, makes things a lot of fun. I also wanted to point out the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So it should be in that same panel where the chat is at. We really want to utilize that for any questions that you might have throughout. That way it separates questions from just chat back and forth. And so if you would use that to put your questions into, we're going to try and answer those throughout. And maybe if we can't get to them, circle back at the end to answer a few more. Lastly, I just want to make you aware that we are recording this presentation. And so feel free to share that with friends afterwards once it becomes available, because I know there's going to be other people that want to hear what is being said today. Be on the lookout for the post-event survey. We really appreciate your feedback so we can continue to make these events better and continue to grow them. There's also going to be a link there for how you can get involved in other events that we have going on. And so virtual homecoming is coming up, and I know you're going to want to be a part of that. So with all that said, I'm going to turn things over to our guest host for the day, who's going to introduce our featured presenter.
Thank you so much, Caleb. It's great to be here today. I feel so grateful and honored to be here with such a great alumna, JJ DiGeronimo, for this webcast. Welcome everyone to Finding Your Fuel Stations to Empower Your Best Self. I'm Colleen Carrow. I'm the Director of Alumni Success at the Ohio University Alumni Association. I'm a three-time Bobcat, but right now my team aims to support and celebrate the lifelong career success of our alumni. And so JJ is just such a great example of that, with both herself and with the work that she does to inspire and motivate others. And I know we're going to get a lot of great inspiration and motivation today, both for our professional careers and our personal lives as well. JJ is a 1995 graduate from the McClure School. She has a communication systems management degree. She founded Tech Savvy Women in 2008, which is an organization that works to retain, celebrate, and advance experienced professional women in tech and other industries. And it's a really wonderful website and resource, so I really recommend that you check it out. She is described as a gender diversity expert and women in business advocate. She provides strategies, best practices, and action-based techniques in her recent book, which is called Accelerate Your Impact. And it complements her 2011 book, which is called The Working Woman's GPS. She has been quoted in many publications, including Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. She shares her expertise with Amazon, Ingram Micro, RIT, Symantec, Jabra, KeyBank, Mead & Moore, Scout, BMC, Discover, Raymond James, Grainger, UCB, and Rockwell Automation, to name a few. It's quite a list. But today she's going to share a little bit more of a personal side to her life and how she keeps herself motivated and aligning to the right energy and activities. And I just feel like this is so perfect right now as we launch into fall. We're all juggling work, personal relationships, kids in school, and now the upcoming holidays amidst everything else that is going on in our worlds and lives. So JJ, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so thrilled to spend the next hour with all of you, and I hope that you'll be engaged, ask questions, and bring up some points that are resonating with you. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. So we'll start kind of at the beginning. After you left OU, you jumped into a career with Accenture, which of course was known as Anderson Consulting at the time. And you left cold Ohio for Hotlanta. I'm wondering, what did you think about fuel stations and monitoring your commitments then? Were those things that were on your radar at all?
No, no, definitely not. I was eager to make my mark professionally. Starting with Anderson and Consulting at the time, I spent most of my first, few years with Anderson on the road. And so I was really just trying to prove myself, deliver on what was being asked of me, and make sure I didn't make a fool of myself. Because I feel like once you leave college and jump into the professional world, there's a lot of unknowns. And it's not always easy to sort of figure out the way to show up, the way to represent yourself in meetings, the way to be on webinars. And I probably had a lot of things that I blocked out of times when I didn't know what I was doing and I fumbled, or someone kind of pulled me aside and said, hey, we don't do it that way. So my first few years into the workforce was very much just figuring out the lay of the land and how to show up and do a good job.
Now, thank you for sharing that, because that is a little bit of the personal side, and I think we all have those moments and fumbles. You've talked about imposter syndrome and self-doubt and self-efficacy, and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about those terms, what they mean, and your experience with those.
Yes, maybe things have moved forward since I've been on campus, but I don't remember talking about this in any of my classes, about feeling like you don't belong, that you don't have what it takes, not really knowing that this is more of a shared belief for many of us. I was never even told about self-doubt, and definitely not imposter syndrome. And I feel like just over the last few years that there's more articles in Forbes and Inc.com and many other of the magazines are starting to share how many professionals, young and old, are sometimes second guessing themselves and sometimes saying, I just don't know if I can do what is expected of me, or maybe they're not applying because they feel like, they can't really do the work. But in reality, oftentimes when we're tapped on the shoulder or we're excited about an opportunity, even if we're not, 100% prepared, we should definitely stretch ourselves in new ways. And I think that would have been incredibly helpful to me, definitely in the first decade of being a professional. It really wasn't until in my mid-30s that these terms became more prevalent. And I'm not sure it's because, as you get older, you learn more, or you have mentors or sponsors that share it with you. But I definitely wish more people would have told me that both men and women struggle from imposter syndrome. Most of us at some time in our life have had an enormous amount of self-doubt, and that you do have to build your self-efficacy. And for those of you that don't know what self-efficacy is, first, that's not uncommon. Many people don't know what it is, but the National Center for Women in Tech do a lot of studies around this. They're funded by the National Science Foundation. And self-efficacy is not only having a vision for where you want to go and what you want to throw your energy at, but also believing you have what it takes to make it happen. And because it is a learned trait, you can only believe you can do it if you take on opportunities you're not 100% ready for. So this could be in your community, this could be at your local organizations, this could be at the school district, this could be still going back and getting degrees. This can happen in any aspect of your life. So I'm just curious, I'll be curious. I think, Barb, now's a good time to maybe throw up the first poll, because I'm curious how many of you might have struggled with this too, or are struggling with this now. So I think we'll put a poll up, see if I'm alone or I've got some friends in the self-doubt camp. So the polling question is, does negative self-talk impact your decisions more often than you like? I feel like it's a little bit of a horse race here. And so 38 people are yes, 8% are no. It's awesome.
It's a great question, and I was trying to vote myself, but I can't vote because I'm here helping host and talking to you.
So I'm going to end the poll here so that everybody can see the results. Did everyone who wanted to vote? All right, so I think we'll share. You guys have shared the results. Can everyone see the results? Yeah, I'm guilty too, Rebecca. I am definitely guilty. I still have this. So even though I've been studying and sharing strategies and tools around imposter syndrome and self-doubt, and really helping people strive more towards building their self-efficacy, I still struggle with this. I mean, I'll get a call or I'll be asked to be part of a meeting or do something, and my first initial thought is, oh, you can't do that. Or who do you think you are? Or you're not ready for that. And I really have to compartmentalize those thoughts oftentimes to really say, is this something I want to do? Is this something that's a good use of my time? And I'll talk a little bit later about how to do that. But it does take work to sort of train yourself not to follow that first initial reaction, which generally is not very supportive and not very helpful. Great. So I just will share the results. Hopefully you guys can all see them. All right, we're going to stop sharing. Does everyone see? Okay, great. We're going to close that out, the polls, and we'll move on. All right, very good.
Thank you so much for that exercise. I think it's also refreshing to see that, okay, we're not alone in doubting ourselves. There are others who feel like we do. Now, one thing you talk about is aligning your commitments. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about that. Why do you talk about it, and why does it matter in relation to these other things?
Yes, that's a great question. So when I started my women's group in 2008, I really did it out of a need to find people that could share some advice on all the things I was juggling at that time. I really did not have any intentions to write a book. Mostly because I'm just horrible at grammar, and I took most of my papers up to get edited days before they were due, because my freshman year I had gotten so many D's because I'm horrible at punctuation and sentence run-on, so how could I possibly even write a book? But I feel like sometimes when you're heading down a path, things start to be put in your path to help you along the way, and I've seen that so many times in my life. And so when I started writing down all the stories that women were sharing with me about how they were juggling all the things that they had committed to, many of them shared that you need to protect your schedule. You need to put the right things on your schedule. You need to be present in your schedule. You need to make sure that your energy is aligned in your schedule. And although very great advice, and I'm a huge advocate for leadership and self-help books, I still was like, how do you do that? Like, it all makes total sense, but for me, I need a how. And so when I put my first book together and I started sharing all these stories about how you keep everything going, what you align to, I started to put together some charts in my head of how to categorize the information that was being shared with me. And I was connected to this fabulous woman who became my editor. She was about 30 years ahead of me, and she was really fantastic because she gave me a great perspective on the evolution of women and women in the workplace and such. And I would tell her about these charts, and she would say, you need to write it down. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I put these charts together, and now the charts are the most popular part of the book, which is so funny, but I'm going to share a chart with you. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to go through one of the charts. Okay, so the chart is 6 columns, and this is a chart that I created after listening to so many people tell me like how important it is to protect your schedule. And so I'm like, I really started asking more questions. And so I put the chart together, and the first column is commitments. So the first column is commitments. And this was something I carried around for weeks. And funny, I started with one Excel spreadsheet that I printed out and carried with me. And if I started a call, if I met with some people, if I did some things in my community, if I did it for my family or some of my other commitments, I would write it down exactly what the commitment was. And then I added this into my second book because it was such a popular chart. I wanted to refine it. And so the next column I added in my second book was, who is requesting this commitment from you? Is it a spouse, friend, family, you know, somebody you work with, someone in your community, someone at your children's school, somebody, like, and it could be you too. So is it, who's asking you to do this commitment? Now, I added this in my second book because I found I had some repeat offenders in my life. Does anyone have those people in your life that keep asking and asking and asking? You find yourself running around crazy for them all the time, only to find that they're achieving their goals and doing things. Oh, good, I've got some hand raises on that. But honestly, you know, sometimes you need to really assess, like, are you spending the right amount of time on this? Oh, I had a couple hand raises. So yes, I did too. I had some family members, I had some people on my team that over asked. And I would say yes, way too often. And when you say yes to people, you're actually giving your time away, which is one of your biggest assets. And so just being mindful of are you saying yes to and why? The third column is alignment. I added alignment because people always said to me, you need to focus on your goals. You need to focus on your goals. So I'm like, well, what does that mean? How do I focus on my goals? Well, what I taught myself is I focus on components that allow me to achieve the goals I have right now or the goals I have in the future. And so I look at this commitment and I say, does this commitment, so whether it's writing something up, having a conversation, a project, whatever the commitment is, making brownies, whatever it is, does it align to where I am or where I want to go? And so you just use a yes or a no. The fourth is really my favorite and probably the most for me enlightening column, because it really helped me understand more about my natural gifts. And the fourth column is energy. So energy is, do I enjoy this commitment? Is this something I look forward to doing? Do I enjoy it when I'm in it? Do I want to do it again? Because oftentimes, if you have a calendar full of things that you don't like to do, your energy is usually very low. Sometimes you're swimming in a mud puddle. And when I was going through this exercise, I had 2 kids under 3, I had a global job, I was aligned to the wrong team, the wrong manager, things at home and I had to switch people out that were helping my kids. And I just, like, everything in my life was kind of like falling apart. And I didn't realize that I was not only in the mud puddle, but I was attracting more people in the mud puddle, and I was a bad representation of who I really am. And I think this can happen to any of us at any time. And, you know, some people reflect in different parts of their life, just thinking, oh, I was so depressed then, or I didn't like myself, or who was I at that time? Oftentimes it's because you're aligned to the wrong activities. So if this is resonating with you and you feel like you want to get a little bit more information on this, I have this chart. I have a whole chapter on it and a video that you can share it with your friends. You can go back and revisit it, and the link is below. So I think the thing to notice here is that your calendar does really make a big difference in how excited you are about life if you're aligning to things that fill you up. And I love the term fuel stations because I want to make sure that a larger subset of my commitments are aligned to things that excite me, that I'm excited to do. Because I've been in places in my career and in my life where my commitments are not so great and they don't excite me, and honestly, they deplete me. And so I think for many of us, just really thinking about what is on our commitment list, who's asking us, does it align to where I am or where I want to go? Does it give me the right energy? And is it the right amount of time? Now, I want to give you a quick example. So I love women entrepreneurs. I just love what they stand for. I love what they're doing. All my business is around women in the workplace, most of which, but I just love it. And so oftentimes I'm asked to be on boards or panels or committees. And I have learned over time that I need to really understand what is being asked of me, because even though it aligns to something that's important to me, it gives me good energy, sometimes the timing is off. And so there was a nonprofit that asked me to mentor some of the women in the program. And normally I'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, I would love to. But doing this exercise, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. How many women are there? What do I need to think about? And so I was talking to the executive director. She said there was about 20 women and she wanted me to meet them in person. So I'm starting to right away say, okay, I need to reach out to them, schedule meeting time, meet with them in person, follow up with them. That's about 3 hours per person times 20. That's a lot of hours, 60 hours. So I said, let me think about it. Oprah taught me years ago, like, give it 24 hours, give it 24 hours. So I called her back the next day and I said, I really would like to help your women. Tell me a little bit about these programs. I noticed on their website that they got together in person once a month. I said, tell me a little bit more about these in-person events. She shared a bunch of detail. And I said, how about I come and meet with the women there, give a little presentation, and then I'll stay after and chat with anybody. And anyone who wants to follow up, they can give me a phone call afterwards. The executive director is like, this is great. This is awesome. And I'm standing there, thinking, okay, maybe she doesn't realize that I'm going to do this in place of mentoring. So when I just reconfirmed with her, I said, I love meeting with these women, but I'm going to do this in place of the mentoring one-on-one. She's like, oh yeah, that's fabulous. I think it's a great idea. So you can see how I shifted a 60-hour ask into 3 hours. So I really think for many of us, we need to be cognizant of what we're saying yes to and make sure it's the right amount of time that we're willing to give up. And for many of us, we need to really think about our commitments and what needs to move off of our list, because the things that are staying on your list that don't have the right energy and don't align to where you are or where you want to go are taking up space for what could be on your list. And so if you, like I said, if you want to download this, you're more than happy. If you have a question about this, I'm happy to share it. But Colleen, what do you think? What do you think of the chart?
I love the chart. I'm going to steal the chart and I'm going to start using it right away. It's amazing. I like when you talk about the power of yes. It's like having the power of choice.
Yeah.
And you've given us so much to think about. Like, what do we need to think about before we say yes? And I saw a comment come up in the chat about, when we're saying yes to one thing, we're saying no to something else, because like you said, time is our most valuable asset.
That's exactly right. And this takes a lot of practice. I call this a lot the power of no. I talk a lot about that, but honestly, I rarely say no. One of the ways I use my LinkedIn network is oftentimes when I get a request that doesn't really align to where I'm at right now, I often make connections in LinkedIn to other people. Like, hey, love the ask, love what you're doing. Here's a person I think that's a better fit for you. I'm not sure I can fit in this quarter. And that's been really helpful because I'm always trying to make connections. And if you read any of those Link and other books, like, I am a natural connector. So that's a very easy thing for me to do, is connect or share someone else that could take on that request. And in doing so, I've been able to really give a lot of people opportunities. So that's very rewarding. So a few things that I keep track of, I have a whole list of these things, but I just highlighted a few of these. I'll just talk through these and put them online. Do I understand the expected outcomes? Is this project aligned with my goals? I call it I2 goals because I really focus on where do you want to have more influence and impact? Where do you want to have more influence and impact? And does the ask align to that? What other commitments could interfere? Who needs to be involved to ensuring that it actually, you can float across the finish line? What would success look like? Is there budget? Obviously, that's a big one for women. We always take on things that that we don't have budget for, and then we end up budgeting things and taking a bunch more time. What are the known obstacles? And do I need more information before I start, just like I shared? So I would definitely challenge most of you before you start this, that you really think about what you've already said yes to this week, what you said yes to this month, maybe what you shouldn't have said yes to, and really start to get hyper-focused on where you want to throw your energy, what you want to align your energy to. Because what I've learned through researching all for both of these books is that really comes down to the energy you have to share and the time you have to share it. And when you think about life that way, it's a lot easier not to be just throwing yeses around. So with that, I think we're going to share another poll just to see where everyone's at.
Awesome.
All right. All right, poll number 2. If we have it here, here it comes.
Yes.
Do your yeses act as fuel stations and provide you the momentum you desire? Yes or no? Ooh, it's exciting, exciting. We'll share the full results, but just about half the people, and we've had voted, and so far it's almost 50-50, 60-38. This is super exciting. I'm looking forward to showing this. So, all right, they're coming in. Yeah, I'm looking at the comments too, which are great. So Jennifer, I totally agree with you. This year has put a whole new spin on what we're going to say yes to and no. I think it's given us, I've heard a lot of people say, like, what are you going to run back towards? And I love that. Laura, she's like, I need more options than yes and no. I love that. Great. Okay, so we're sharing the poll now. So a lot of us, right, are already aligning our yeses. Some could do some work. Hopefully this chart just helps me, gives me a tool. So when people are coming to me and saying, can you just do this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And honestly, it's given me the confidence to change the ask. And I cannot tell you how powerful that is. When you can change sort of what is being asked of you to align it to something that's more impactful for you and for your time. I can't tell you how many times I have done that where I've been asked to, I just like, you know, I've been asked to work on a panel, but then I'm like, well, you know, I'm going to give the panel opportunity to somebody else, but here's something I can do for you in exchange. I can do a 15-minute mindfulness session, or I can do a 15-minute Q&A session. And so I really have been working, even the end of last year, I was asked to fly to San Francisco for a 20-minute presentation. And although that sounds glamorous, I've spent my life on the road. That 20 minutes for 8 hours of commuting is a long time. So I'm like, why don't you just let me create a video and I'll send that on behalf, and then I'll join to answer any questions. Not to mention it would have been a Saturday and it cut into some of my family time that's so important. And so being able to negotiate with them to do a video with a live Q&A, they loved it. It cut down costs on their budget and allowed me to allocate just a few hours to it rather than 48 hours. So there's a lot of ways that you can use this to benefit your schedule, but still allow you to show up the way that makes sense for you.
Well, and I think what's nice too is you still really are saying yes, right? You are helping someone out, you're saying yes, you're making them happy, but you're doing it, like you said, in a way that works better for you.
Yeah, and I don't know about any of you listening in, but I was never taught how to do that. And it wasn't until I started interviewing all these people ahead of me that gave me tools and strategies and the advice. And for those of you that, you know, are working and have children, some of the better advice that I've gotten is to sit down with your kids and say, okay, listen, you've got a whole series of things in, you know, October, November, December. I can go to 3 of them live. What are the things you want me to be at? And for my network, many of the people travel for their career. So, you know, sitting down and setting expectations and making sure that you don't travel on the key days that are important to people you love, not only, you know, kind of sets up this give and take, but gives you the freedom to travel on the days, you know, the 20 other things that come up that may not be as important to them.
Absolutely. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I want to ask you, so tell me if you're ready to move on, but I want to ask you about this term you have, practicing polluters.
Yeah. Yes. So, practicing polluters. This is not something that, well, let me just be honest. I think when I told you before that I was in the wrong alignment of job, kind of things were falling apart at home, like everything was kind of not working. I realized that the energy I was sharing was so negative. And I noticed that because the people I was attracting in my life, their disposition, the energy they shared was also negative. Have you had that?
Yes. Yeah, you articulate it very well, and I think hindsight's 20/20, right? Because sometimes when we're in the middle of it, we don't see it.
We don't, and we don't know that we're the practicing polluter. And I often say, if you have people around you that are like Debbie Downers all the time, it's probably because you're attracting them. I know, it's a harsh truth. It's the harsh truth. I actually put a whole chapter in this book on practicing polluters because I had a few people in my life that as I started to clean out my schedule, as I started to align my commitments, as I became more of what energized me and filled me up, the less patient or the less appetite I had for people that were always highlighting the negative in life. Again, not realizing that this is such a game changer, that, you know, really focusing on the positive and changing your lens to a positive, looking for the positive everything. Not only does it change how you feel, but it attracts different energy to your life.
And you said something earlier too. You talked about how, correct me if I'm wrong, but you talked about how when you like align your energy and you decide what you want to focus on, opportunities show up for you. And I feel like it's the same with people, that when you align your energy, the right people for you show up for you.
Oh, I couldn't agree. Yes, so many things happen. And I think it wasn't until 2016 that I started more of a mindfulness practice and meditation, that I became a lot more present in my everyday interactions. And it was like miracles are falling out of the sky some days. Like I said, oh, I could really use some help finding a resume writer. I could really use some help with somebody who's a graphic designer. And once you know, I'd be in the grocery store line, or I'd be talking to a friend that was telling me a story about a friend that happened to be a graphic designer. So I feel like if you really think of your life as a way to kind of exchange energies and ask and align to things that sort of enlighten and elevate all of us, it's amazing how many things are presented to us if we are aware of our surroundings, which is hard to do these days with our cell phone. I mean, you really could get, your whole life could get sucked up in watching the feeds of whatever social platform you follow. And I have been an active advocate of, you know, if I want to do it 30 minutes before I go to bed, or maybe when I wake up, I don't run through my life checking my phone anymore. You could almost write a book like the 4-Hour Work Week, the 45 minutes on social, because it will suck away the opportunities to connect and align with things to kind of propel you in the direction you desire.
And JJ, we had an awesome question in the Q&A.
Yeah.
They wanted to know what they should do if the person that they're around is related to them and they have to be around them. They can't really control that.
Yes. I almost get this question in almost every event where I'm talking about energy. So, you know, I want to clarify and question, but I won't ask it. So I'll just say, you know, if it's your brother, your spouse, your child, your father, your mother, you know, there's different strategies, but you can start to create boundaries. And, you know, I've had to do this in my life too, where I've almost had to be over time pretty frank that, you know, hey, I know things aren't going that great, or I know things aren't, you know, unfolding the way you expect. And I don't mind chatting about this for 5 minutes, but I will not chat about it for 25 minutes. So I give space to kind of vent, but then I move on to be like, all right, 10 minutes is kind of my tops, unless I feel the need to do 15 or 20. But then I'm like, hey, we're going to talk about, even if we talk about the weather or a movie or something positive. And I guarantee you over time, that person will stop coming and chewing your ear off, because they only generally want to go to people that want to elaborate, collaborate in that conversation. And if you start to create boundaries around how long you're going to do that with them, I guarantee you they'll find other people to do it with. So I'd love to know what you think of that. And if it's something you tried or.
It's a really powerful strategy. Again, I mean, and what you're doing when you're doing that is you're aligning your energy, right? You're setting those boundaries, just like drawing on that chart. The chart helps you set the boundaries for how you want to align your energy. You're applying that in a personal relationship.
Yeah, I just think you really, yeah. So I've even told people that I love, like, this is my boundary. Like, I will not put up with that. If that is something you want to do, by all means, go and do it, but not in my sphere. It's amazing how people respond when you start to create your own boundaries, but positive and love. I mean, I think that's the thing I want to make sure. It's not, you're not being a jerk, right? You're just saying, hey, listen, I'm trying to protect this space because when I realize when I'm in this zone, I deliver better value, I connect with my kids better, I'm a better daughter, I'm a better whatever your fill in the blank is. And I'm protecting this space. And so I don't mind listening for a few minutes about this and that, but that's all I can really handle before it starts to really kind of cut into the energy I've been savoring all day or storing all day. So, but I've found so many times that the people go on to somebody else. They want to be with someone that's going to commiserate with them.
You mentioned mindfulness a minute ago, and I want to poke you a little bit on that because I think it's such an important and beneficial practice. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about that and, who can benefit from mindfulness? Can anyone benefit? I know you've worked even with attorneys on mindfulness.
Yeah, so I definitely will touch on that. And before I jump in, I love the idea of safe topics. Like, what are the safe topics? And I think coworkers too, one of the things I've had to do with coworkers, people that have been on my team, is like, hey, if you're going to say something negative, you have to follow it with something positive. And so you're training people how to behave with you. And I think mindfulness is training too. I have to be honest, mindfulness was one of those things that I thought were for people that wanted to go to a mountaintop. I did not think mindfulness is something that I could use. And it took me several years to really get my arms around how to use it in a way to not only simplify my life, but create more joy. And I did end up going to a mindfulness class at a local UH here in Cleveland, had an 8-week mindfulness course. And I was a horrible student. I came the first day with a notebook and pen and a soy chai, and I'm sitting there, I'm ready to take all these notes. And when it comes to the point in time where she's like, Suzanne was my teacher, she's like, all right, now we're going to sit in complete silence and we're just going to, I think she gave us cherries at the time. She's like, we're just going to taste this food that I gave you. And I started getting ideas for my day job and I started writing them down. And she's like, what are you doing? I got a great idea. I'm writing it down. She's like, no, you let the ideas flow. You just let them flow by. You don't hang on to any one thought. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Who would ever do this? If you have a good thought, you got to document it. And so it took me several classes, but I know that we're going to put in the chat. I have 10 lessons I've learned from mindfulness that I'll share with you. But it is one of those things that, thank you, Cal, for putting that in. It's one of those things that really has helped me. And I think someone just put up, a lot of people like to just write their thoughts down. I think for any of us, it is a tool you can use to really recognize that your thoughts, even though they seem to be who you are, they really are just a piece. And that your thoughts really don't need to control you. And that in reality, being aware of what your thoughts are on a regular basis can be incredibly insightful to what you are and aren't doing based on what you're telling yourself on a regular basis. So this is incredibly important for the lawyers because they're such driven on time and they were so driven on just getting it done all the time. And they had, amazingly enough, even the lawyers and someone had 10, 20, 30 years of experience, they still struggle with self-doubt. They still struggle with imposter syndrome because every case, it's like they're starting new. And I think for many of us, having some inner peace that you have what you need to do the work at hand can really not only change the way you show up, but give peace of mind to the people you work with too. And so it's really been a game changer, but I will be completely honest in saying that it took me about 24 months to really give myself permission to learn the techniques and tools. And that was, back in 2016. And so I'm very much still a student of mindfulness.
24 months that's a long time. That's a commitment, and it's a stretch to stick to something. What would you tell someone who says, I'm not up for it. I just don't have it in me. What can you provide to them? Any tools, tips, thoughts?
Well, what turned the corner for me is that I finally had reached a point where I achieved many of the goals that I had set for myself. And I did not have the joy that I thought I would after reaching those really significant professional milestones. And I realized, am I ever going to have joy? Because to me, I feel like I'm just on this gerbil wheel all the time. And what am I going crazy for every day and producing and delivering and achieving and all of these things if I'm not going to have joy in my life? And I actually ended up in a therapist's office a few times that, was like, you need to go to mindfulness. And I'm like, lady, I am serious right now. I need to get my life in order. And every time she would say the same thing. So I ended up going to mindfulness, which happened to be at the same place where they had it too. And like I said, it was 8 classes, and it took me the first 3 classes to just relax. I think I'm a A++, and yeah. So I just think everybody can benefit from it, but people always say the teacher shows up when the student is ready.
Yeah. So joy starts from within.
Mm-hmm. That's probably one of my biggest lessons in life, honestly, is that I think society teaches us from such an early age that joy will come from all these external things. And I'm almost 50 now, and I have to assure you, I felt like I had a lot of those things that society and every brand tries to market to you. And even with all those things, it does not guarantee joy. And in fact, you still will be searching. And it is not until you go within to do the work that you really start to have peace of mind, more laughter, more current time in the present moment. And some people are born just more present and available and aware than others. And I think, depending on where you are in your journey, you may have been experiencing this for a long time. I'm a hard driver, very milestone driven, and it just took me a long time. And a lot of wasted years, I would say, a lot of wasted years because I was just striving for the carrot for so long.
Absolutely. And I know you host retreats too. Retreats with drumming and fire release and a farm to table chef. I'm like, can I sign up for one of these retreats, please?
Well, it's so interesting, and yes, you can, but it's so interesting because I thought about retreats for 3 years because I'm a keynote speaker. I speak at a lot of women's events across the country. And I see a lot of women similar to myself that are striving so, working so hard to get there. And once I sort of realized that a lot of this inner knowing and wisdom can be accomplished by doing, practices and activities. And I felt like I wanted to bring these same women together in nature with an organic chef that, could experience some ancient drumming or iridology or essential oils, which I'm sure many of you have dabbled in some of these. But I didn't do it for 3 years. And I ended up talking to a friend in California, and I was telling her, I really want to do this. And she's like, you have been talking about this for years. Why haven't you done it? And I said, well, I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And she's like, build what you want to go to. Build what you want to go to. And for me, that was transformative because, again, I was looking externally for approval. And so for anyone who's listening right now that has something you've been thinking about, that really wants to take something to the next level, build what you would want, because you are your customer in many ways. And if you build it for you, you will find your tribe. And I think that is just such a reassuring message that I wish I had heard so much earlier in my life, because it took the shackles off of myself of having to be perfect, having to deliver something that everyone else would like. And you know what? My whole mental strategy was, if nobody comes, I just felt myself a weekend away. And and I think for many of us, like, allowing ourselves to do what is calling us. I meet so many people that are doing something else, and you could start something right off the side of your desk. Like, I started my women's group in 2008. I started writing my first book in 2011. I had a full-time job through this whole thing. And I started off the side of my desk. And I think for many of us, just starting off the side of your desk, small steps can really manifest into some really fascinating, enlightening, and awesome projects. So if anyone's listening right now, it's no mistake that you're here. And if you have something you've been thinking about, I highly encourage you to take some small steps to do it.
Again, I come back to the aligning your energy chart. And, you know, if you want to have that little bit of space to launch something off the side of your desk, you have to, you know what you want to say yes to, so that you can have the space to do that.
Completely. And I love it. I love, Kate, that you signed up for your CrossFit certification. Congratulations. This is the year to do it. I mean, if you've been waiting for anything, if this isn't a year to be like, this is the time, what are you waiting for? Make it a reality. This is it. So, and I love the fact that making no choice at all is actually making several choices. And for a long time, I put a lot of pressure on myself as a mother and as a wife and as a worker to show up for everybody else. And I have to say that I ran myself into the ground. I didn't know what my fuel stations were, and I wasn't aligning what I knew was true.
Are there some other questions out there? I know we had a Q&A going as well, so we may have some other questions from the participants.
So Barb, while we're doing that, can we put up poll number 4?
Oh, good. Let's do it.
So poll number 4 is, will you commit to set aside time in your calendar to invest in you before November? Oh, I love this. I mean, amen. This is so exciting. So this is the thing. If you've joined this call, it's probably because there is something that is calling you that you have to give attention to. And so if you get off this call, I hope you open your calendar, whether it's handwritten or online, and start to block off even 30 minutes a week for something, whether you're reading articles, reaching out to someone who's ahead of you in the path, or is somebody that can give you advice, or working with a friend, whatever it is, this is the time. And I feel like for so many of you waiting on the sidelines, like, hopefully this year, this webinar will encourage you to take the steps you need to make it happen. Because I find that my retreats are one of my most successful things I've done, and I waited 3 years to start it. And I feel like I could have impacted so many more women. And the whole reason is because I was trying to be perfect when that wasn't necessary at all. I just needed to put it out there, and the women that came made it perfect. So for everyone who voted, they all say yes. So I'm so excited for all of you.
That's great. See, I knew we were going to get so inspired and motivated. And there are so many groups coming in on the chat. I'm not sure everyone can see all of these. I see Donna went to college for the first time at age 68 and graduated at age 72. That's another great story.
Yes, and find an accountability partner. You know, I joined a mastermind just last week, and I find that these accountability partners, people that are working, it doesn't have to be on the same thing, but they too are working on something, just checking in every week with each other. I think having those people that can be accountability partners can be so instrumental.
Here's another question that came in, JJ. Why do you think women self-sacrifice so much?
I mean, the list is long, but one, we are natural nurturers. So first and foremost. Two, we are often taught from an early age that this is how we need to show up in the world. And unless you have somebody that's kind of saying like, hey, get out there, you don't have to do this. And it takes us a long time to sort of figure out the right way to nurture. Because nurturing is very positive and can be very beneficial, but I think it takes some self-work to really figure out how do you want to nurture so that it's not depleting your bucket. And for someone who asked about fuel stations, like if you're constantly doing things that are depleting you and you feel worn down, you're really not helping anybody. So I have many friends that are mothers that just do every little thing for their kids every single day. And like, that's wonderful, and that may make you a great mother, but it may not too. You may be disabling your kids, but I can assure you that if you're not happy, and you don't love yourself, you can only give as much love as you love yourself. And it really benefits to carving out time to be by yourself. And so whether that's a walk, whether that's going to the movies by yourself, whether that's reading a book for 30 minutes before they get up, do not schedule yourself out of your own schedule. Is that Sherry? I think it was. I see SHER. That's awesome. I love your advice. She says, don't forget to explore options. Being happy with yourself breathes the energy to others. None of these are particularly easy. They are not, but worth every minute.
Well, JJ, you talked about, when having conversations with people who are those Debbie Downers and sort of coaching them and training them to be positive. It occurs to me that especially for mothers doing that nurturing, scheduling that time for yourself, you're teaching your children to learn to practice that. You're creating a living example for them.
Well, I think that's an honor, and if I can help anybody shorten their learning so that they can make the impact they came to make, like, I love that. I love that. And any nuggets you take from this and use is a blessing. I love Regina's going back to school at 66, and Suzanne is starting to do more online activities. Yeah, there's so much free content online. I listen to YouTube all the time. There's so many motivating videos, and I really turn my phone into like an education on the road. So I'm a podcaster, I listen to audibles, and I'm an active YouTube listener too. I just refuse to let negativity come into my sphere.
Oh, here's a good one. Here's Regina's comment about the pie chart.
Yes, isn't that the truth? That is the truth. And honestly, for me, my passion is to get more women at more tables and showing up in new ways than they're showing up, 12 months ago. So take your piece of pie, get the sugar, and get to work, ladies. That's how I feel. And for the men out there, we cannot appreciate enough. We need sponsors, we need mentors. And honestly, the reality is that like men can help us open doors and slide open windows. And I think for any of us out there, helping other people achieve their goals is so rewarding. So I really appreciate Caleb for introducing me and bringing me on this podcast, and Colleen and Barb for making today possible. I love the conversation, Colleen, and Barb, thanks for being behind the scenes and keeping all of us aligned.
Thank you, JJ. It was so great to have you. And Caleb, thank you for allowing me to host and get to know JJ a little bit. It's been so wonderful and really inspiring.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much, Colleen, for hosting the wonderful discussion, JJ, for sharing your time with us and talking about your experiences and sharing some things from your book. I saw one of the comments, how excited someone is to go read your book. And so we do appreciate you sharing. And I particularly enjoyed the idea of changing the ask. I think that could be big for me, to something that fuels me a little bit more. So I really enjoyed that, and I appreciate you taking the time and just giving your time back and helping Bobcats out. This was a lot of fun, JJ. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm so grateful for all of you, and OU is such a just such a blessed place in my heart. So if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be here. So I'm super grateful.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to everyone that participated today. I hope you enjoyed and had a lot of fun. This recording will be available shortly. So if you enjoyed this, got something from it, be sure to share with your friends. Let them know. Also, be sure to visit the Ohio University Alumni Association website and check out all the events that we have coming up and register for more Empower Hours like these. The next one is special homecoming edition, virtual homecoming coming up. So be ready for that. So thank you to everyone. Thank you again, JJ. Thank you for being here. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week.